Hi guys, welcome back to another ocean vlog. If you're new here, my name's Carissa. I run the Conservationist Collective with my partner in all things, Alex Filardo, and today is my 29th birthday. And so after over 10 years of working in marine conservation, I thought that I would do the 29 things that I've learned in the last 29 years of my life when it came to ocean conservation. Mostly because I know that most of our viewers ultimately want to dedicate their life to the ocean in some ways. And hopefully you can learn these lessons by me telling you them instead of having to learn them firsthand like I did. So let's get into it. Okay, number one, infighting and enemy mentality is what's preventing scalable change. I've watched too many nonprofits think that the other nonprofit doing work in the same area is an enemy when we're all working on the same thing. So if you ever find yourself in this competition mindset, squash that immediately. The limiting factors always seem to be funding and political will. So if you care about long haul things, and I found myself moving in this direction too, focus on changing the funding pool and changing political will. Sometimes in a capitalist system, you have to bring it back to money. I found that, frankly, some people just don't care about the intrinsic value of nature the way that a lot of us do. And so being able to put dollar amounts on things is tangible for folks that are maybe more focused on the bottom line or business. So one example of this is a study that evaluated that manta rays are worth 200 times more alive than dead for their potential applications towards ecotourism. And so when you think about folks harvesting manta rays and driving them to extinction, that conversation starts like, well, look at this economic opportunity you can make for yourself that is much more significant for you and your family and your livelihoods. Sometimes you got to bring it back to the dollar amount. We have to work closely with the people who are in nature every day in their backyards. And that means hunters, fishers, folks that I think in the earlier parts of my career, I used to think were part of the problem. And at the end of the day, they have deep knowledge about their place and deep understanding of the way it has changed. And they have a lot to say, and we have a lot to learn from them. We're in serious need of help from people who are not marine biologists. We need people who have experience in public relations, in politics, in building businesses, in teaching kids. We need people who don't have that level of schooling and expertise to come into this field and offer that perspective to it and that level of understanding. And so we're seeing that a lot with right now. We have it's 2023, we see a recession on the horizon, and there's like a bunch of layoffs happening in tech, but all the hiring is happening in clean energy because the market is switching over to clean energy. So how can you, who may have had an experience in tech, switch over to help the climate crisis? So that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Collaboration is essential to scale. This kind of goes back to the other one, but you don't want to have competition mentality, especially with people who work closely in your area. But if you need to scale your work, you have to be working with other people, with other organizations. You have to build coalitions and community groups, and real scaling you're gonna need their help. We don't know what we don't know. The climate crisis and the ocean crisis are the same thing. I used to view all these things as separate. I used to think they needed to be marketed as separate. It's actually much more effective to communicate it as the same thing, because then folks feel like when they're making progress on the climate crisis with climate solutions, they're also helping the ocean because it's one interconnected planetary system. Also, just the fact that the climate is what's causing the ocean to decline, and the biodiversity crisis is breaking down the fabric of our planet that supports the climate. It's all just deeply connected. And I heard someone, I think it was Dr. Peter Kalmus, the NASA climate science, say it's like Earth breakdown almost. It's not like, oh, the climate's changing and the temperature's getting hotter. It's like the fabric of the Earth, the foundation of this complex interconnected system is breaking down. Saving endangered species is usually a market or economic problem. So we are in the sixth mass extinction. My first entry point to endangered species work, which I worked in for 9 to 10 years, was through the vaquita, which is an endangered porpoise in the Sea of Cortez. I went to undergrad in University of Arizona. When I started, there were 75, and I think there might be 4 right now. They're functionally extinct. Using that as like a case study example for this, I just want to explain that that was a market problem, right? So the fishers that were accidentally catching vaquita were going for something else, the totoaba swim bladder. And that was because of the market demand for that bladder was tens of thousands of dollars. And frankly, that's what they were going after. And so being able to sparse away these issues and saying it's not the fisher's problem, it's not their fault. They're doing what's best for them and viewing it from a human lens is extremely key to be successful in ocean conservation. And when you have to deal with it on a species by species level. So that was just the example with the vaquita. But if you look at say whales, right? It's like the Save the Whales movement did far more because it shifted the culture and social fabric of society to love whales and become fascinated by whales. Imperfect solutions are still solutions, and they're definitely progress. I think I wrote this thinking about electric vehicles. There's so much infighting about the imperfections of electric vehicles, and because there's so much opportunity for improvement of this new emerging piece of the market. Clean energy is difficult because we have to store that energy in batteries, which requires mining and lithium, but also there's been battery innovation at scale. And so just because things aren't perfect doesn't mean we don't take a step in that direction and then we figure it out then. We shouldn't not decarbonize because EVs aren't perfect. That doesn't make any sense. You know what's worse? Fossil fuels. Bridge builders are the most valuable part of climate solutions. If you're someone who gets along with people, is social, is extroverted, can find common ground with folks, is, in some on extreme cases, sometimes is a people pleaser. This is like an essential skill for implementing solutions here because you need to work with people. You need to work. We are all working together on this one shared planet. We're one Earth family that needs to work together to solve this problem. And a lot of people can't work with other people. So if you're someone who can work with people of different personalities, with different perspectives, who don't agree with you, that's kind of like the best type of person to have on your team. Just saying. You have to make things personal for people to care sometimes. I've realized that sometimes people just don't care about an animal because it's that animal. And I had to learn that the hard way because it was so hard for me to understand because I love these animals for everything that they were. And it's like, they just don't care. And so how can they care in a way that's personal to them? Because we're self-serving individuals. And as we move towards a place where things in our life are jeopardized because of the loss of this animal, that will hit home further and that will have larger conversations. So a good example I think of for this is regenerative agriculture, right? So like telling a farmer that they, need to introduce, they need to start introducing cover crops and herbivores and view it as a holistic system and change the way they've been farming forever is like probably going to put them off in some ways. They're like, I've been doing this for decades. Who are you to come in and tell me how to do things? But if you view it as a way that's like, this will increase your crop yield year round, this will enable you to stop taking subsidies from the government because your crops are lower. This will enable you to use less pesticides and all these things. That kind of hits different because it hits them in their day-to-day life. If you're not telling your story, you're missing opportunities to make a bigger impact. So many nonprofits that I've been affiliated with didn't have the capacity to have a communications or media person. And they were losing such critical opportunity to not just, hire people and find the right team members and grow their team and find funding, but really to build their network of potential funders, which would scale their work significantly. And so our rule of thumb is about 20% of your time should be going to telling other people what you're doing. You can't rely on big organizations, institutions, and governments to do the work for us because it's all being done by everyday people. There's not some person in the sky who's going to save us when it comes to this issue. There's not. It's us. And the solutions being implemented are being implemented by people like you and me. They're just waking up every day and choosing to do it. They're in jobs or they choose to do it, or they're not in jobs and they're choosing to do it. And I think that when you dwindle every single system, problem, program, or project down, it's just a bunch of people who care. And so if you're someone who cares, then maybe ask yourself, why aren't you one of those people yet? Saying no to a plastic straw won't save us, but the conversation that starts because of it might. The perfect zero waste movement had been deemed problematic for a number of ways, even though sustainable living is such a valuable entry point into other topics related to environmentalism and climate. And so one of the big lessons I learned is that I know a lot of people in my life who say no to straws because of me, mostly because they love me and respect me. And that does add up. I don't want to negate that. It does add up. But it's mostly because of what happens when you're at a restaurant, you pull out your reusable straw and someone goes, "What's that? What's going on? Why do you do that?" And that conversation is really where the change is, and where culture shifting and societal norms is. Localized solutions tailored to specific place will be sustained in the long run. This is a huge thing. Place-based conservation, localized conservation is really key, and it's something I've only really learned and become comfortable with in recent years, mostly because there's so much more community buy-in. And I don't know if this is because I'm working in Hawaii, where it's so important to have a localized approach to conservation, but I think it's just because when people can see improvements and solutions in their own backyard, it's extremely crucial, and or it hits home for them, because they're like, well, now I see the results, I want to be participating in it. Oh, I was part of that conversation, I consulted on that, I have knowledge of this place. It brings us back to connecting with our neighbors in a way that is frankly how we should have been doing it all along. Conservation communication is so key to making sure the next generation is involved. Okay, so we need to be inviting everybody into this conversation, but the next generation specifically, they don't know what I know, having worked in this field for a little less than a decade, or what someone a little older than me knows. And we have to make sure that they're coming in prepared for what's to come, and also, frankly, not spoken down to because they don't know. They know so much, and they care way more because they know that they're living it. I'm going to be living it too, and it's not okay to exclude them from the conversation. It's not okay. We need more spaces to share wisdom across generations. Okay, that's kind of the same thing. How many times as a conservationist have I been in a room with someone 2 generations older than me where they got to tell me everything they learned from conservation? None. That's what we need. What did you learn from the Save the Whales movement? What did you learn from when you saved the redwood forest? What can I learn from my grandpa who was alive during the National Park Service establishment? What can I teach my children about plastic pollution? Like, come on. If everyone at the table looks like you, that's a red flag. Diversity always makes problem-solving conversations more productive. Always. Always. As many perspectives as possible. All of them. Tough conversations can be had kindly. This kind of goes back to communication. You have to learn how to not get your point across, but have a conversation about your point in a way that is respectful, kind, well received. But you're not conceding necessarily. But maybe it is your time to concede. So being able to navigate and figure out which one that is. Okay, we are far more than halfway done, guys. Find what makes you stoked and then use that for the environment. I used to code websites, code my MySpace. I used to edit aesthetic photos on Tumblr. I used to play on social media. And in some ways, sometimes for work, that's what I do now. I used to edit travel vlogs on iMovie. It's all the same. What makes you stoked? You like music? You should check out Ziggy Alberts and what he does for the ocean with his music. You like art? You should check out Kate Dolbear. She's on our team. What does she do how does she use her voice for the ocean through her art? Anything. Apply it to anything. The world is moving this direction anyway, but we need to accelerate it. We're going to clean energy. People know there's a crisis at hand. They're watching it before their eyes. They know we need to do something. They're still figuring out how in a lot of ways, in a lot of sectors, and we need to accelerate it. So whatever your niche is, whatever your area of expertise is, accelerate it how you can. We can't stop fishing, and we never will. It's essential for food security. So let's focus on feasible solutions. I want you to listen to that again if you needed to hear it. I was vegan. I was plant-based. I thought that we could end fishing. We can't end fishing. Come with feasible solutions. I'm sorry if that is triggering. Okay, at this point, we're just sitting in the dark, so just bear with me, guys. So, sometimes you should just be listening. Yeah. Especially if you're in rooms with people you want to be more like, just listen to what they have to say. They've got knowledge more than we do. Don't forget to take care of yourself and your own relationship with the ocean. It is the foundation of the rest of it. This is really important and something that I'm continuously learning because that's why we do all of this, right? Because of the ways that we love the ocean and the natural world. And so you need to make sure that you're not burning yourself out and you're resting, but that also that you're cultivating and keeping that relationship that brought you here in the first place. Solving all of these challenges comes from ultimately changing human behavior. So even if you like change policy or you implement a marine protected area or you are building a sustainable fishery, all of that ultimately comes back to human behavior and human actions. And how do you change human behavior? Most of that comes from empathetic conversations, connection, understanding, finding common ground. So when you simplify it down to that, it becomes a little bit easier to conceptualize. At least it has for me. The water crisis, ocean crisis, biodiversity crisis, climate crisis, and extinction crisis is all the same thing. I think I said that one before. Ocean conservation looks different for everyone. Don't think that your journey within ocean conservation needs to look like someone else's, because it'll greatly depend on the skills that you have, the things that you value the most in your life, the natural spaces that you value the most, where you live, what upbringing you had, what direction you want to go in, and a lot by the decisions that you make. And so don't think that you need to be saving sea turtles if you're most passionate about design. And the last one, we're in desperate need of your help.